Coming up tonight on Fifth Third Business Beat, a deal makes a local company one of the biggest in the nation in its industry. New practices for an old business could rake in millions. A group that helps corporations build business relationships with minority firms surpasses its goal. A Northern Kentucky company snagged some government money in a project with the Department of Defense. Author and consultant Matthew Kelly explains how the concepts in his book Dream Manager apply to family businesses in this week's Gehring Center report. Doug Moorman, Vice President of Economic Development at the Chamber, talks about the business community's attempt to get Delta to reinstate some international flights out of CVG. Fifth Third Chief Investment Strategist John Augustine looks at the weekly economic report. And Mark Andreas, CEO of Clark Power Systems, joins Doug Bolton for Publisher's Beat.
Fifth Third Business Beat is brought to you in part by Fifth Third Bank and Cincinnati Bell.
Hello, I'm Brian Patrick. Welcome to Fifth Third Business Beat for Friday, June 26, 2009. In this week's Business Courier, a merger 18 months in the making turns a Mason company into the second largest player in the material handling automation industry in the U.S. Intelligrated acquired the North American operations of UK-based FKI Logistics. The deal was completed last Friday. It gained this Westchester manufacturing facility in that deal. Intelligrated's industry sector includes automated conveyor, sorting, palletizing, and order fulfillment systems.
The companies fit together very well in kind of two ways. One, we both have strong warehouse and distribution products and services, and those engineering groups are going to be combined. We also are bringing on a very strong group of consumer product goods oriented group that will be very additive to us and not part of what we have today.
Intelligrated's headquarters will remain in Mason. It now has 21 sites across North America and employs more than 1,500 people. A Forest Park company wants to create a new image, and it's starting with a new name. Vyanda, the company formerly known as Berkeley Premium Nutraceuticals, cut the ribbon on its new call center today. The newly renovated center is only one change made to a company that was bought for $4 million out of bankruptcy. Deceptive marketing practices led to a fraud conviction and a 25-year prison sentence against its founder. The new owner has kept most of the management team but has implemented a number of review processes.
The compliance department is very important to the call center. Number one, assuring that we're saying the right things, that our agents are following our rules, that our scripts are being adhered to, and it's a vital piece of the Vyanda pie.
The $1.5 million phone system in the new call center has software that tracks customer calls, flagging those in which employees raise their voices to customers. Vyanda's best-known product is Enzyte, a blend of minerals and herbs, and known for its Smiling Bob ads. Minority businesses in Greater Cincinnati earned more than $450 million last year. That's even more than the goal set by the Minority Business Accelerator at the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber. The MBA is an outgrowth of the Cincinnati Community Action Now Commission, set up after the civil unrest in 2001. It's getting ready to release its biennial report, in which it shows that local minority-owned firms helped by the MBA have grown revenue and local jobs.
Numbers look wonderful. We've seen double-digit growth over the last 5 years. We've had a growth in the number of firms in our portfolio. We're now at 28. And we've seen a growth in the number of corporations committed to spending locally with minorities.
The MBA hopes to continue growth during the recession. Its new target for those in its portfolio is to spend $500 million annually with local minority businesses by the end of 2010. On the front page of the Business Courier this week, in-depth coverage of the paychecks and perks of some local CEOs. Business Courier editor Rob Dahlmeyer is here to talk about the extensive research the Courier does in compiling this. First of all, Rob, how did the economic slump affect these salaries and perks this year?
Well, it affected them, but not nearly as badly as you would have thought. Now, bonuses were way down. over the rest of the nation, but locally actually bonuses were up a touch. And salaries remained flat essentially as compared to last year. So while a lot of people saw pay cuts, a lot of people lost their jobs, and granted CEOs did see other parts of their compensation get impacted, pay was essentially flat, even up a little bit.
What's the average pay for
Well,
CEO?
the median pay for the 38 companies we looked at for their CEOs is about $1.5 million. That's almost exactly the same as it was last year. So again, it's not changed that much. Now this ranges though, you have to remember these 38 companies ranges from the bottom salaries, mid 200,000 level for some small banks, up to A.G. Lafley at Procter & Gamble, the highest paid, and he's over $23 million.
All right, so you have overpaid, underpaid, fairly paid. How do you calculate this? What do you mean by that?
Well, what we were trying to do is you can just list the salaries. You can just say, here's what all the CEOs make. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to take a look at what is the bang for the buck, the shareholder return, and also how these companies are faring against their competitors. So we kind of mashed that together and created a ranking, and that's how we got these divisions. We looked at companies. If your company did very well and you did well against your peers, you were going to be fairly paid, sometimes even underpaid. Matter of fact, we have a large group of underpaid if you look at the story. If you didn't, but your pay was still high, then you ended up on the overpaid list.
Now, the Business Courier does this every year. I
We
would
do.
imagine there's a little apprehension out there in the
There is.
community as this edition comes out.
Absolutely.
each year.
Pay is a touchy subject. It is for everybody. We do a lot of pay lists, but these are CEOs of publicly held companies. These are companies that you and I can go out and buy shares in, so they have to disclose everything. It would not be fair otherwise. Well, this is a part of what's disclosed, and a lot of people would argue that CEO pay is extremely relevant when you're talking about whether or not you should invest in a company. How are they doing as far as the packages they're putting together for these CEOs?
It comes with the territory when you're at the
Absolutely.
top. So who are the most overpaid?
Well, this year, the most overpaid CEOs we saw were James Wayne Scott at AK Steel, Terry Lundgren at Macy's, and Fernando Aguirre at Chiquita. Again, those change every year. Those guys have not been on the list in the past, but right now, those were the three. The companies had rough times, but the pay stayed pretty high.
And the underpaid?
The underpaid were Robert Zapp at Bank of Kentucky, Stephen Wilson at LCNB Corp., and Frank Gerace at Multicolor. And Frank Gerace is on almost every year he's on the underpaid list, so he's kind of a consistent player on that part of the list.
And there are some that are right there in the middle. They're fairly paid for what they're doing and what they're getting.
Absolutely. I would say the 38 companies we looked at, the divisions this year between those three areas were about as clean or about as even as we've ever seen them. We had gotten to the point where there weren't that many overpaid CEOs, but because so many companies have had so many problems through this slump, well, the pay hasn't really dropped to show that. So that's why that group of overpaid CEOs is bigger this year.
Fascinating information. Thanks, Rob Daumarter. A full report in this week's Business Courier, beginning with the front page. Here's the Courier Greater Cincinnati Stock Index. We track the performance of about 40 local stocks compared with the broader market using the Dow Jones Wilshire 5000 Index. A tough week for stocks. The local index fell around 3%. The overall market declined about 4%.